The darkness in a coal mine isn't just an absence of light. It's a physical weight. It presses against your eardrums and fills your mouth with the taste of ancient dust. Jackson Miller knew that darkness better than he knew the lines on his own hand, but today the darkness was different. It tasted like burning rubber. As the thick, oily smoke from the conveyor belt rolled over him, swallowing the beam of his cap lamp, Jackson realized the engagement ring hidden in his locker might never see the finger of the woman he loved. He was 2 miles in, 500 feet down, and the air was running out. The alarm clock didn't buzz. It clicked a sharp, plastic sound that severed the night from the morning. 3:30 a.m. In Harlan County, the sun was still hours away from cresting the ridge, but the day had already begun. Jackson "Jocks" Miller lay still for a moment, listening to the rhythm of the trailer. The wind rattled the aluminum siding, a sound like dry bones shaking in a cup. Beside him, Sarah breathed softly, a rhythmic, peaceful sound that felt completely out of place in his world. He turned his head carefully, wincing as a spasm of pain shot through his lower back, the miner's pinch, his dad used to call it. At 26, Jocks felt 50. He looked at Sarah in the dim light of the street lamp filtering through the curtains. Her hair was fanned out across the pillow, a golden contrast to the gray sheets. She looked delicate. Too delicate for this place. Too delicate for a man whose hands were permanently stained with coal dust and grease. He slowly slid out of bed, his feet hitting the cold linoleum floor. The kitchen was small, smelling faintly of last night's fried potatoes and the ever-present dampness of the valley. Jocks moved through the ritual of the morning with mechanical precision. Coffee, black, thick, scalding. He drank it standing up at the sink, staring out the window at the darkness. He could see the lights of other houses flickering on up the holler. It was a constellation of early risers, a silent brotherhood of men preparing to descend. He thought of his father then, Big Jack Miller, a man who could lift a transmission block with one hand, but couldn't lift himself out of the depression that followed the layoffs in '98. Big Jack had died in a chair just like the one Jocks avoided in the living room, his lungs turned to stone by the dust. "You're leaving early," a soft voice said. Jocks turned. Sarah was standing in the hallway, wrapped in a quilt. She looked tired. The worry lines around her eyes were deepening, and he hated himself for being the chisel that carved them. "Got a double shift today," Darnay Jocks said, forcing a lightness into his voice that he didn't feel. "Big Tom says they're hitting the mother lode in Section 3. Bonus P." Sarah didn't smile. She walked over and took the coffee mug from his hands, setting it on the counter. She took his hands in hers. Her skin was soft, lotion smooth. His were callous, rough like sandpaper. "We have enough money, Jocks," she whispered. "The bank loan is approved. We can get the smaller house. You don't need the bonus." "I don't want the smaller house," Jocks said, pulling his hands away gently to button his flannel shirt. "I want the brick one. The one on the hill, the one where the floodwaters can't reach." "It's not the floodwaters I'm scared of," Sarah said, her voice trembling. "It's the roof. It's the methane. It's the phone call, Jocks. Every time the phone rings during the day, my heart stops." Jocks grabbed his hard hat from the hook by the door. He couldn't have this conversation again. Not now. If he softened now, he wouldn't be able to get on that cage. He needed the armor of his stubbornness. "I'm safe, Sarah. I'm the best bolter in the county. I promise." He kissed her forehead. It was a quick, fleeting contact. He couldn't linger. He walked out the door, the screen slamming shut behind him, leaving her standing in the kitchen, a silhouette of worry. The drive to the Cloverfork mine was a procession of pickup trucks winding along the river road. The mist was heavy, clinging to the trees like wet cotton. Jocks lit a cigarette, the cherry glowing in the cab, fighting the damp chill. The bathhouse was loud, a stark contrast to the quiet of his home. This was the locker room of the gladiators. Metal doors slammed, boots were stomped on concrete. The air smelled of old sweat, chewing tobacco, and the specific, metallic temps of coal. "Hey, Jocks! You hear about the game?" Big Tom shouted from across the room. Tom was a giant of a man, his beard already dusted with the remnants of yesterday's shift. "Missed it?" Jocks grunted, moving to locker 314. He spun the combination dial. Left 3, right 14, left 26. The date he met Sarah, he opened the door. Inside, tucked behind a stack of clean socks, was the velvet box. He didn't take it out. He just touched the top of it with his thumb. It was his talisman, his why. The ring had cost him 3 months of overtime. It was a promise of a future where he didn't have to wash the black off his skin every night. He stripped off his street clothes there. Civilian clothes and began the transformation. First, the thermal underwear. Then the heavy denim overalls, with the reflective strips on the legs. Then the steel-toed metatarsal boots, heavy enough to crush a soda can without him feeling it. Finally, the belt. The miner's belt is the lifeline. On it hung his battery pack for the cap lamp, heavy as a brick. Next to it, the self-contained self-rescuer, SCSR, a stainless steel canister that contained 60 minutes of chemical oxygen. He cinched it tight, feeling the weight settle on his hips. He walked to the lamp room, grabbed his light, and clicked it onto his hard hat. He tested the beam. Bright. Good. All right, ladies. Let's go make some money. The foreman, a wire-thin man named Skeeta, yelled. They walked to the elevator, the cage. It was a rattling, open-air metal box, suspended over a 1,000-foot drop. Jocks crowded in with 20 other men, shoulders rubbed against shoulders. There was no personal space here. You breathe your brother's air. The cage dropped. The sensation of the drop is something you never get used to. Your stomach floats into your throat. The square of sunlight above gets smaller and smaller until it is just a star. And then, ... nothing. Just the darkness and the rushing wind. The air pressure changes, popping your ears. The temperature stabilizes to a constant 58 degrees. When the cage hit the bottom, the doors clanged open. They were in the bottom, the main hub of the mine. It was like an underground city. Rails, wires, massive pumps, and the low hum of electricity. They boarded the man-trip, a low-slung rail car that looked like a shoebox on wheels. Jocks sat across from a kid named Davy. Davy was new, maybe 19. His helmet was shiny, not a scratch on it. His eyes were darting around, looking at the roof, looking at the ribs of coal. "First week?" Jocks asked, his voice shouting over the rattle of the tracks. "Yes, sir," Davy said. "Third day." "Don't call me sir," Jocks said. "I work for a living. Call me Jocks. And stop looking at the roof. If it's gonna fall, you won't see it coming anyway." Davy swallowed hard. "Right. Thanks, Jocks." The man-trip screeched and sparked as it took the corners, heading 3 miles back into the mountain, deep into Section 3. Section 3 was a hostile environment. The ceiling, the top, was only 48 inches high here. That meant you didn't walk. You duck-walked or you crawled. The floor was mud and uneven rock. The air was thick with rock dust, coating the back of your throat with a chalky paste. Jocks was the roof bolter. His job was critical. As the continuous miner machine chewed the coal out of the seam, it left the rock roof unsupported. It was Jocks's job to go in immediately after the miner and pin the roof together. He climbed onto his machine, the Fletcher. It was a dual boom drill, a mechanical beast that he operated with levers. He maneuvered the machine under the freshly cut roof. It was bald roof, dangerous, unsupported rock. "Hello, get up," he read the rock like a book. He saw a slip, a crack in the strata. He saw a fossil, a fern leaf, imprinted in the shale millions of years ago. These were weak points. Conquera. The drill screamed as he drove the steel bit into the stone. Dust showered down, covering his goggles. He drilled a 4-foot hole. He grabbed a tube of epoxy, resin essentially superglue, shoved it in the hole, and then rammed a 4-foot steel bolt up behind it. He spun the bolt to mix the glue. Thud. The plate slammed against the roof. Secure. He did it again. And again. And again. It was a dance of violence and precision. One mistake, One slip of the hand on the lever, and the machine could crush him against the rib. Or worse, the roof could come down. Hours passed. The only clock was the ache in his shoulders. "Lunch," Skeeter yelled, his voice barely audible over the ventilation fans. The machines died. The silence that followed was heavy. The men sat in the crosscut, leaning against the coal. They turned their lights too low to save battery. In the dim glow, they looked like specters, faces black, eyes white. Jocks opened his pail. A ham sandwich, flattened, a little Debbie cake. He ate quickly, wiping his hands on his pants, trying not to ingest too much coal dust. "So, you buyin' that house yet, Jocks?" Big Tom asked, chewing on a piece of jerky. "Close," Jocks said. "Couple more checks." "That girl of yours," Tom said. "She's a good one. You better lock that down before she realizes she can do better than a mole like you." The men laughed. Jocks smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. He thought of the argument this morning. He thought of the ring. He felt a sudden wave of exhaustion. Was it worth it? The dust, the darkness. He looked at Davy, the new kid. Davy was staring at his sandwich, not eating. "You gonna eat that?" Jocks asked. "Not hungry," Davy mumbled. "Stomach's in knots." "Eat it," Jocks commanded gently. "Your body needs the fuel. Panic burns calories faster than work." Davy nodded and took a bite. "Does it ever get easier?" he asked. "Being down here?" Jocks looked at the black walls surrounding them. "No," he said on a soul. "You just get numb to it." The shift resumed. The rhythm returned. Drill. Bolt. Move. Drill. Bolt. Move. Then the smell hit. It wasn't the smell of methane, which is odorless. It wasn't the smell of explosives. It was the smell of friction. Hot metal. Melting rubber. It was a smell that triggered a primal alarm in every miner's brain. Jocks stopped the drill. He lifted his head, sniffing the air like a wolf. "Tom!" he shouted. "Shut it down!" Big Tom killed the continuous miner. "I smell it," Tom said, his voice dropping an octave. Then came the smoke. It didn't waft in. It rolled. Thick, yellow-black smoke, churning along the roof of the tunnel, moving with the ventilation current. It was coming from the Intikta fresh air side. That was the worst possible scenario. The fire was behind them. It was blocking their exit. "Belt fire?" Skeeter screamed, his voice cracking with terror. "Fire on the main line!" Masks. Now, chaos is usually loud. Underground, chaos is focused. There was no screaming, just the sound of Velcro tearing as men ripped open their self-rescuer pooches. Jocks grabbed the metal canister at his hip. He popped the latch, he pulled out the mouthpiece and nose clip. He shoved the rubber flange into his mouth, bit down on the lugs, and clamped his nose shut. He tasted the bitter chemical catalyst that would generate oxygen. The smoke descended instantly. It was a blackout. The cap lamps were useless. The beam just reflected off the smoke, creating a wall of white glare. You couldn't see your hand in front of your face. Lifeline. Jocks thought. Find the lifeline. He dropped to his hands and knees. The air was slightly clearer near the floor. He groped for the rib of coal, feeling for the plastic cord that ran along the wall of the lifeline. He felt a hand grab his ankle. He kicked out instinctively. Tendriali said, "Davy." He tried to shout, but the mouthpiece muffled him. He reached back and grabbed the boy's harness. He pulled him close. He put his face right up to Davy's mask. He tapped his helmet light. "Follow me." They were cut off from the main crew. Big Tom and the others were further up the entry. They would have headed for the primary escapeway, but the fire was coming from that direction. Jocks knew the mine map. He knew there was a secondary escapeway, but it went through the old workings, an abandoned section of the mine that hadn't been inspected in years. It was their only chance. Jocks pulled Davy away from the lifeline, away from the others, into a side tunnel. It was madness to leave the line, but Jocks knew if they walked into the smoke, they would die. The fire consumes the oxygen. The carbon monoxide puts you to sleep before you burn. They crawled into the old section. The floor here was littered with fallen rock. The roof supports were rusted, old wooden timbers that were rotting away. The silence here was terrifying. No fans, no machinery, just the sound of their own ragged breathing through the chemical masks. The heat was rising. The SCSRs generate heat as they produce oxygen. The air coming into Jocks's mouth was searing hot, burning his tongue and throat. He checked his watch. 20 minutes gone. The rescuer was rated for 60 minutes sitting still. Walking, crawling. Maybe 30. They had 10 minutes of air left. Davy stopped. Jocks felt the tug on his belt. Looked back. The kid was slumped against a timber prop. He was done. He was ripping at the mask, trying to take it off. Jocks scrambled back. He grabbed Davy's hands, pinning them down. "No!" he screamed with his eyes. "Do not take it off." Davy was crying. Jocks could see the tears streaking the coal dust on his face behind the safety glasses. He was panicking, hyperventilating. He was using up his oxygen too fast. Jocks slammed his hand against his own chest. "Look at me!" He pointed forward. He made a motion of walking. He grabbed Davy by the straps of his overalls and hauled him up. They moved forward. The tunnel was getting tighter. The roof had sagged here. They were belly-crawling now. The sharp shale cut into Jocks's knees and elbows. He didn't feel it. All he felt was the burning in his lungs and the image of Sarah's face. "I promised." He thought of the ring. He thought of the house. He thought of the argument. "God, don't let the last thing I said to her be about money." His vision started to tunnel. The edges were going black. The black, damp carbon dioxide was building up in his blood. He was getting dizzy. Then he felt it. A breeze. Cool. Distinct. A breeze hitting his sweaty face. Air moves, even in the dark. Jocks stopped. He licked his lips inside the mask. He felt the direction. It was coming from a crack in the rock wall to his left. A cinder block wall built to direct airflow had collapsed. On the other side of that wall was the intake shaft for Section 4. Fresh air. Jocks grabbed a loose rock. He hammered on the cinder blocks. They were old, brittle. He smashed a hole. It kicked it Italiano. The blocks crumbled. He pushed Davy through the hole. The kid tumbled onto the other side. Jocks squeezed through after him. He ripped the mask off his face. He gasped. The air tasted of diesel and wet rock, but it had oxygen. Sweet, beautiful oxygen. He coughed, his body convulsing as he expelled the toxins. He retched, spitting black bile onto the floor. He looked at Davy. The kid was lying on his back, chest heaving, ripping his mask off. He was alive. They lay there in the dark, in the mud, for a long time. Just breathing. The simple act of inhaling and exhaling felt like a miracle. They walked the remaining mile to the elevator shaft. They didn't speak. What was there to say? They had walked through the valley of the shadow of death. When they reached the bottom of the shaft, the cage was waiting. The fire crews had put the belt out, but the mine was being evacuated. The ride-up was different this time. The darkness didn't feel like a job anymore. It felt like a predator they had escaped. When the cage surfaced, the sunlight hit Jocks like a physical blow. It was blinding. He had to shield his eyes. The world was too bright, too colorful. The green of the trees, the blue of the sky, it looked saturated, fake. Paramedics were waiting. They rushed forward with stretchers. Jocks waved them off. He stumbled to the grass and sat down. He didn't want to be touched. He just wanted to feel the solid, unmoving earth beneath him. He saw cars lining the fence. Wives, mothers, children. The news had spread fast. He saw the blue sedan. Sarah's car. She was standing by the gate, her hands gripping the chain link so hard her knuckles were white. She was scanning the faces of the soot-covered men emerging from the bathhouse. When she saw him, she didn't run. She dropped to her knees in the gravel parking lot, burying her face in her hands. Jacques stood up. His legs were shaking. He walked over to her. He didn't care about the soot. He didn't care about the foreman yelling at him to get checked by the medic. He reached the fence. He reached over and touched her hair. "Sarah," he rasped. His voice sounded like it had been dragged over gravel. Looked up. Her face was a mask of terror and relief. She scrambled up and threw her arms around his neck over the fence. She held him with a strength that surprised him. She was sobbing, incoherent words of prayer and thanks. Jacques buried his face in her neck. She smelled of vanilla and fear. Later that evening, Jacques sat on the steps of the trailer. He had scrubbed his skin raw in the shower, but the black ring around his eyes, the miner's mascara, wouldn't come off. It never really did. Sarah sat beside him. She held a bag of frozen peas to his bruised knee. Jacques reached into his pocket. He pulled out the velvet box. The velvet was stained with coal dust. It was ruined. He opened it. The diamond inside caught the last light of the setting sun. "I bought this," Jacques said softly, "because I thought it would make up for who I am. I thought if I bought you a big enough rock, you wouldn't mind that I dragged the darkness home with me every night." Sarah looked at the ring, then at him. She closed the box. "I don't want the rock, Jacques," she said firmly. "I want the man. I want you to be able to breathe. I want you to wake up in the morning without hurting." Jacques looked at his hands. They were scarred. They were shaking. "I can't go back down there, Sarah," he whispered. The admission felt like a failure, but also like a liberation. "I can't do it. The darkness. It almost kept me today." "Then we go," she said. "We pack the truck. We go to Lexington. We get the apartment. You get a job where you can see the sky. It won't be much money," Jacques warned. "No brick house. No hill." "It'll be a home," Sarah said. "Because you'll be in it." Jacques took the ring out of the box. He took her left hand. He slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. "I'm sorry it's dirty," he said. "It's perfect," she said. Jacques put his arm around her. They watched the sun dip below the ridgeline, plunging the valley into shadow. But for the first time in his life, Jacques wasn't afraid of the dark coming. He wasn't going into it. He was staying right here, in the light, with her. The crickets started to chirp. Up the road, a dog barked, and far off in the distance, the shift whistle blew at the mean-a-long, mournful sound. Jacques didn't flinch. He just took a deep breath of the cool evening air, and for the first time in years, his lungs felt truly full.